Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. The region urged to guard against corruption. This story takes the lead in our 1004th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 10th December 2020. Details when we return. Welcome back. President of the Barbados-based Caribbean Development Bank CDB, Dr. Warren Smith, on Monday said the current coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has put into focus the thorny and constantly evolving nature of corruption and how it can reverse development gains in the region. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, reminded us that corruption thrives in times of crisis. We must therefore maintain our vigilance as COVID-19 responses open new avenues for exploiting weak oversight systems, Smith said at the inaugural two-day Caribbean Conference on Corruption, Compliance and Cybercrime. The event is being jointly hosted by the CDB and the World Bank. Smith told the conference that corruption was an age-old problem with a remarkable capacity for reinvention, noting that it was critical for financial institutions such as the CDB to employ diverse strategies to stay ahead of those who seek to circumvent systems and processes. He said that the virtual conference is one such strategy by the CDB, and among the topics to be discussed during the two-day event include those not typically addressed under the rubric of corruption, such as the roles of women, youth, and media. He said this was because the bank believes in a multi-pronged approach to combating corruption involving all actors within society. Over in Trinidad and Tobago, the procurement bill has been passed. The piece of legislation has caused disquiet among some members of the national community. This is why some groups are concerned about changes to the bill. Akash Samaru of CNC3 News reports.
The bill is called the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Amendment Bill. And it's the amendments that has the opposition worried.
This bill, if not withdrawn by the government, will lead to the institutionalization of corruption under this PNM administration.
You see, one of the amendments seeks to allow government to make arrangements with foreign states or international financial institutions to procure goods and services without those arrangements falling under the oversight of the procurement regulator, therefore creating two oversight bodies.
One under the procurement regulator and the other one under the control of the Minister of Finance.
The opposition aren't the only ones against this.
Many think honest politician is an oxymoron. If the regulator does not have oversight, who does? Can we trust the cabinet to perform this role? Is the process transparent?
The Law Association has also expressed objection, saying the removal of oversight, scrutiny, accountability, and administrative fairness amounts to degrading public trust and confidence. But the government says some of what it proposed is already law in other Caribbean and European jurisdictions, and a lot of the details in their dealings will be in the public domain.
They are all public documents. Number two, as Attorney General, the financing arrangements are registered in the Registry of Deeds as public documents.
The Attorney General said a lot of power still resides with the procurement regulator, and if passed, the amendments will allow government to enter into agreements easier with other states to deliver services in an expeditious manner. Akash Samaru, CNC3 News.
Meanwhile, the Telecommunications Authority will be meeting with local broadband providers in Trinidad and Tobago to ensure there is no recurrence of Monday's internet shutdown. Urvashi Tawari Rupnarayan of TV6 News reports.
Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation Alison West tells the Senate Monday's data shutdown was caused when TNT's backup system suffered its own failure.
We have the subsea cable coming in through the Antigua channel to Trinidad and Tobago, which is the main source. of connectivity, we have redundancy through a cable coming in from Curacao. The one from Antigua experienced a difficulty on Tuesday, the 1st of December. And while they were in the process of repairing that, which took longer because of COVID restrictions and difficulty with traveling, the cable coming out of Curacao experienced a power outage, and that is what caused the problem that we experienced yesterday.
She says citizens would appreciate when the initial interruption occurred, the redundancy held up. It's difficult, she says, to construct an expensive system for what she describes as a Murphy's Law situation. All three service providers in TNT were affected, but some more so than others.
As I understand it, 2 of the 3 cable providers were more directly affected because these service providers have proprietary interests in those cables and therefore have a greater concentration of their connectivity coming from those cables. The 3rd major service provider has more evenly spread its risk and therefore was not as significantly impacted.
The Telecommunications Authority of TNT, the minister explains, can't tell service providers from where to access their upstream broadband supply. But she says TAT will be having discussions with them to reduce any chance of Monday's recurrence.
Investment has already been commenced. We are meeting with the service providers and having discussions with them and doing our own investigation to determine what is the best solution. I will point out, Madam President, that this is a problem that was not unique to Trinidad and Tobago. The Eastern Caribbean was also impacted, and having regard to the fact that we are reliant on international service, it's difficult for us to eliminate problems, but we will do what we can to make the system as robust as possible.
The minister was at the time responding to a question posed by Independent Senator Paul Richards.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Politicians of serious ilk must let the PPP and right-thinking East Indian Guyanese know that the firing of public servants by the PPP is totally wrong. So says AFC leader Kemraj Ramjatan, who spoke with Nightly News, and Travis Chase has this report.
It is the view of the APNU AFC that hundreds of public servants were intimidated and later dismissed by the new government immediately after they took office. For the Attorney General, the dismissal of public servants was in compliance with the law. But AFC leader Kemraj Ramjatan says there is more in the mortar than the pestle.
Then what happens to all the rules of Public Service Commission? Why did we create these commissions to appoint by order this public servant, and we will discipline that public servant if they've done wrong, and we are going to sack them, that is, fire them? They are the authority. We insulated in our Constitution all of these things. Now, when you are doing that and the ethnicity is predominant, and we know because of historical circumstances, again, the ethnicity is as a result of opposition right now, like PNC people, APNU people, AFC people, and so on. It is not going to go wrong right.
It is public record that a number of public servants, including permanent secretaries, advisors, and other categories of staff from the various ministries, were sent packing by the Irfan Ali-led government.
Well, there is a group that will always be in the permanent establishment of the civil service. They have been trained, and they will be, and that is why I call them the permanent secretaries. They are there no matter which government is there for. So when you start sidelining 6 permanent secretaries and then put in 6 loyalists, that will aggravate the situation, and it is going to bring a lot of bad sentiments.
Ramjatan, like former President Granger, believes that the PPP government started their tenure on the wrong foot when they dismissed several public servants.
So we have to, as politicians of serious ilk, plead with the government of the day. Stop that nonsense. And we also have to talk to right-thinking East Indian members that what the PPP is doing is wrong. The PPP literally now mocks and humiliates black people to the extent of whereby you have like a Christopher Jones, got some property properly in accordance with the law, and they lock him up for 3 days. What you gotta lock him up for?
The AFC leader says he fears the worst in a situation where ethnic firing is obvious.
But all of these things are cumulatively going to rise up the temperature to the extent that there can be a very explosive situation. And that's my fear.
Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Roman Catholic Bishop Francis Aline is calling for the elimination of criminal penalties for homosexuals and an end to all forms of violence against members of the LGBTQ community in Guyana. More in this report from Tamika Rodney of HGP Nightly News.
During an exclusive interview with Nightly News on Monday, head of the Roman Catholic Church in Guyana, Bishop Francis Aline made it clear that even though the Catholic doctrine outlines that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered from a humanity perspective, the existing laws that tend to marginalize them do more harm than good. He opined that many homosexual acts that are being criminalized today are in contravention from those that are moral. He alluded to another type of behavior in society which is morally or biblically wrong, but which does not warrant judicial review.
Adultery is not a crime, but different religions would uphold it as immoral. In other words, so they hold up the ideal of marriage, of commitment, and so that infidelity or promiscuity would be considered immoral. But nobody is going to be taken to court or sentenced for adultery. So this too, that we have a behavior of people that is in the law books, that if persons behave a certain way, there are laws at present that could take them to court and charge them.
The bishop articulated that respect for others does not imply approval of their lifestyles that are contrary to traditional laws. He further explained that the existing anti-sodomy laws are rarely invoked, and when they are, it is with intent to victimize members of the LGBT+ community.
We can open a whole debate about lifestyle, etc., but we start with the human person. Every human person, there's a sacred life there, and you have to honor that. And if a person, for the reasons why a person could have developed a lifestyle are numerous. If that person is struggling with it, if they, looking to find some place in life where they fit in, where they find peace, where they are productive, they're not doing anyone harm. In fact, they can be making a very positive contribution to society. We have to factor in all of that.
Bishop Aline was questioned about specific scriptures in the Bible which condemn the lifestyles of homosexuality and why the Catholic community has first taken up the mantle to lobby for the rights of the group. He responded by saying that he believes that some texts in the Bible are conveniently avoided.
Sometimes can be a bit selective in what we draw from scripture. And we sort of go back and say what the Bible says. This is an authoritative word, and we may not counter it. But then the Bible also says, and this would be put before every Christian, is to love and respect, so that we don't start by judging and condemning. When we look at Christ as the pattern for us, and we who are disciples, we are trying to follow that mind of Christ.
In October of this year, Pope Francis, head of the Catholic Church in Rome, also called for the recognition of civil union laws that would provide legal protection for same-sex couples. Guyana is one of several Caribbean countries where homosexual activity is a criminal offense. The anti-homosexuality laws provide the prison sentences of up to 10 years for consensual same-sex relations. Tamika Rodney reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.